and welcome to our worship this week. It is a joy to share with members and friends who have been following us for some time that Andrew David Matveld will be joining us starting September as music director of Church on the Hill. We look forward to his vision and all the gifts that he has to offer us as the new music director of our church. Today, we are looking at a rather sensitive topic, a topic that a lot of people might say, well, that doesn't apply to me because it's adultery. But I want you to listen to what Swedenborg has to say about it, because Swedenborg has a little bit different take on what adultery is, and I think that it's something that each one of us struggles with. Now, a reading from 2 Samuel, chapter 11, verses 1 through 15. In the spring of the year, the time when kings go to battle, David sent Joab with his officers and all Israel with him. They ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. It happened late one afternoon when David rose from his couch and was walking about on the roof of the king's house, that he saw from the rooftop a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. David sent someone to inquire about the woman. It was reported, "This is Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite." So David sent messengers to fetch her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Now, she was purifying herself after her period. Then she returned to her house. The woman conceived, and she sent and told David, "I am pregnant." So David sent word to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Joab sent Uriah to David. When Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab and the people fared, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." Uriah went out of the king's house, and there followed him a present from the king. But Uriah slept at the entrance of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. When they told David, Uriah did not go down to his house. David said to Uriah, "You have just come from a journey. Why do you not go down to your house?" Uriah said to David, "The ark and Israel and Judah remain in booths, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I then go to my house and eat and drink and lie with my wife? As you live, and as your soul lives, I will not do such a thing." Then David said to Uriah, "Remain here today also, and tomorrow I will send you back." So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day. On the next day, David invited him to eat and drink in his presence and made him drunk. And in the evening he went out to lie on his couch with the servants of his lord. But he did not go down to his house. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. In the letter he wrote, "Set Uriah in the forefront of the hardest fighting, and then draw back from him, so that he may be struck down and die." A reading from John chapter 6, verses 15 through 21. When Jesus realized that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. When the evening came, his disciples went down to sea, got into a boat, and started across the sea to Capernaum. It was now dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. The sea became rough because of strong winds were blowing. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea, and coming near the boat, they were terrified. But he said to them, "It is I. Do not be afraid." Then they wanted to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached land, toward which they were going. A reading from Swedenborg's work, True Christianity, paragraph number 314 and 315. In the spiritual meaning, committing adultery refers to contaminating the good things taught by the word and falsifying its truths. In fact, that committing adultery refers to these things has not yet been known because the word's spiritual meaning has been hidden until now. In the following passage, it is obvious, however, that committing adultery, being adulterous, and being promiscuous have no other meaning in the word. In the heavenly meaning, committing adultery refers to denying the word's holiness and desecrating the word. This meaning follows from the spiritual meaning, which is contaminating the good things of the word and the falsifying its truths. People who in their heart laugh at everything having to do with the church and religion are people who deny the word's holiness and desecrate the word. In the Christian world, every aspect of the church and religion comes from the word.
Give me a clean heart, so I may serve you. God, fix my heart so that I may be used by you. For I'm not worthy all of these blessings. Give me a clean heart, and I'll follow you. Give me a clean heart, so I may serve you. God, fix my heart so that I may be used by you. For I'm not worthy of all these blessings. Give me a clean heart, and I'll follow you.
So many people oftentimes talk about the Bible being this book of purity and goodness, which it certainly is. However, so often we forget the reality that the Bible covers many of the human sinful situations, and it does so for good reasons. In our story today, we learn that adultery happened even at the highest level of the holiest place in the biblical time of those days, in the kingship of Israel. In the Lord's hand-chosen successor, he looks out and sees a woman he wants to be with, invites her in, and the two of them commit adultery. And he's thinking, well, there's no way she's going to get pregnant, so it's not a big deal. But when all of a sudden she becomes pregnant, David's first response is to ask himself, how do I cover this up? So he sends for her husband and has her husband actively tries to get her husband to go home, but he refuses to go home. His desire to cover it up just doesn't work because Uriah's purity of spirit. He says, I can't go and do such things when the Lord is uneasy and when my country is threatened and when my fellow soldiers are still at risk. I cannot do that. So David goes one step further. He's like, I know I can get him drunk, and when he's drunk, I can get him to go home. But Uriah's nature is still pure enough to stop him from going home. So what does David do? David asks how he can cover up his sin by killing Uriah. Now, many of us might say, well, one, I am not king. I do not command armies. I I haven't committed adultery, so this story means nothing to me. This story, there's no point to it. I do this, I can walk away. But Swedenborg argues that adultery isn't just about people who are not married performing sexual intercourse. Swedenborg argues that adultery is not about these surface things, but is actually about, in reality, internal things. The violation of what is good and what is true, of separating the marriage of those two things, of goodness and truth, and replacing one of them with your own desire or with your own will. What does that mean? Well, quite simply, it means looking to the Bible to justify what you want it to justify. It means looking to the church to satisfy your worldly desires and not actually caring about God in the process of it. It means that each one of us exists in a world where even, again, and I'm not accusing any one person in particular, even David, even the king, even the person who was considered to be the highest, fell victim to it. At some point in our life, at some point in our year, maybe our week, maybe even in our day, we separate what is good and what is true. And then we try and cover it up. And what we're being told in this story, because eventually, because of this sin, David is not actually allowed to bring the Lord to his resting place in Jerusalem. That's reserved for his son. But even the person in the highest place commits sins that leave behind them a wake of devastation. And what the Lord is telling us is that for us to seek redemption, for us to seek a feeling of wholeness again, is we need to work on reuniting what is good and what is true. We need to start asking ourselves, what does the Lord require of us? What does the Lord want us to do? We need to stop asking the question, what do I want to do? And start asking the question, what does God want me to do? You see, David was supposed to be leading his troops. David was supposed to be leading Israel, but instead he wanted to stay back. David was supposed to be serving God, but instead he was fulfilling his own desires. Meanwhile, Uriah represents the faith, the goodness, what is right, that we know, by the way. I'm not saying, oh, I didn't get it. I'm saying David knew Uriah was all of these things and still sent him to his death. We, at so many points, can know that it is God we're supposed to be looking to, and yet we still look to our own worldly desires. In a very light way, one could even say, well, should I go to church today or not? Going to church today, it means fighting traffic or getting on the T or taking that walk. I could just stay in my nice warm bed and watch some movies. Well, that's an example of it. It can be that simple. All the way to saying, I am going to purposely misrepresent myself and my faith in order to use the church or use something that is in the church to fulfill my own worldly desires and needs. It can be a little tiny thing, or it can be a huge thing, but we are always fighting that battle. We are always asking ourselves, and the funny thing about this is taking place in Scripture right when the armies of Israel have actually become successful, right? So there's a certain time in which we're like, yeah, we got it going. We don't need to worry about losing. We're doing things right. No one's going to catch me. I'm set for life at this point. And then it's when we sacrifice the faith. It's when we become self-assured. It's when we think no one's looking. It's when we think no one has us figured out. It's when we think that we're better than all the people who are around us. And we never are. We, as disciples, must not lose sight of the Lord. It's like the disciples in the boat. When they lose sight of the Lord, all of a sudden they're tossed about and back and forth, and they see the Lord, and they think it's up to them to save the Lord. They want the Lord to get in their boat, but without even realizing, they hit dry land. They lose track of where they are, like David did. So this week I would like us to think a little bit about what it is we desire, what it is we want. When we ask ourselves the question, what am I supposed to be doing? How do we replace what the Lord is asking of us? What does it mean for us to purify the things in our life by asking what the Lord is calling us to do versus using everything to satisfy our earthly desires? If we are able to do that at least once this week, we will have conquered what Swedenborg says is the heart of spiritual adultery.